Hello everyone! So it's Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction. So I've never actually done a book discussion before. Usually I write up reviews and discussions on my blog and then make other book related videos for this channel. But the book that I'm going to be talking about today deserves to be discussed. And that book is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. What I'm going to do for those of you who haven't read the book is basically try and summarise the story and give you a little overview of the plot without spoiling anything. But then for those of you who have read the book, I will be discussing all things spoilery later on in the video because I just have to. I love this book. If you hadn't guessed that already, words cannot even express how much I love this book. I just could not put this book down. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm grinning into my pillow like an idiot because of these two characters. This book is definitely my favourite from this year, without a doubt. And I have read some really good books this year that I have been completely excited about, but this is a clear winner. Not only is it my favourite read from this year, but it is probably one of my favourite books of all time. For me, when it comes to Rainbow Rowell books, I kind of thought that nothing would ever beat Fangirl, just because I related to Fangirl so much. But I think I like Carry On better than Fangirl. If you've read Fangirl before, then you will have had a slight introduction into Simon Snow's world. If you haven't, then this book follows Kat throughout her first year of college. And Kat is a huge fan of a very famous book series called Simon Snow. And she loves the characters in the books so much that she writes fanfiction about them, particularly about Simon and his arch nemesis Baz. The author of the Simon Snow books in Fangirl is named Gemma T. Leslie, and you get snippets of her original books, and then you also get sections of Kat's interpretation. So we get to see two different versions of Simon Snow within this book. Carry On is not a continuation of either of those. Carry On is Rainbow's own version of Simon and Baz. And I am so glad that she decided to write her own version because it is glorious. So Simon Snow goes to a magical boarding school and he has a lot of magical power. He's one of the most powerful magicians in the world, and so he's basically a chosen one. But he's not exactly the best choice. Simon doesn't really have a clue about his power and how he came to have that power or what he's supposed to do with that power. It's so strong that he can't really control it. So he relies heavily on his mentor throughout the book, who is the mage. He is also the headmaster of Watford. Whilst being headmaster of the school, the mage has done a lot in terms of recognising all magic. Kids that weren't really seen as exceptionally powerful are still invited to the school. So whilst he does have some good intentions, the old magical families don't agree with his policies. The old families basically start a war against the mage, and that's not the only war that's going on throughout the book, because everyone basically is being attacked by the insidious humdrum. And they don't really know much about what the insidious humdrum is. They just know that it's a very powerful force that can cause holes in the magical atmosphere. And the insidious humdrum has been attacking Simon Snow ever since he came to Watford. So he is very much on the mage's side in trying to fight the humdrum. And then there is his roommate Baz. He's been his enemy since they started at the school. And Baz is also a member of the Pitch family, who is one of the old magical families that are against the mage. And they completely despise each other and they're always fighting. But then something obviously happens in the book that changes that, and suddenly Simon and Baz find themselves having to work together, and from there it shows how things change between them. Simon also has a girlfriend called Agatha, who he's having a lot of problems with. And we also have Simon's best friend, Penelope Bunce, and her family basically has conflicting emotions about the mage. So that's basically a little summary of Carry On and the characters. The book actually has a lot of varying perspectives, which is really, really interesting because we get to see everybody's point of view, and everyone's got such a different personality. So like I said at the start of the video, I absolutely adore this book. That's all I'm going to say in the spoiler-free zone of this video. So if you haven't read the book and you would like to find out more about it, I did write a spoiler-free review on my blog, so I'll put the link in the description area. It killed me writing that review without spoilers. It really killed me. It killed me writing that review full stop because I find it really difficult to write about books that I love, which isn't really a good quality in a book reviewer, but still. So my emotional mess of a review is down there. If you decide to go ahead and read the book, then feel free to come back here and we can discuss it in all its spoiler glory. Bye bye now. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye. Hello again! So I'm assuming that all of you here have read the book. If you haven't, then don't say I didn't give you enough warning. Okay, so carry on! I don't even know where to start discussing this book. I have taken notes, I've got notes on my phone. I have way too many emotions about this story. So let's start with Simon. I definitely didn't expect to like Simon as much as I did. Maybe that's because in Fangirl, the little experts of him in that, I didn't really like his character. But in this book, in Carry On, oh my god, he is such a fantastic character. I also love how much he swears. He just swears all the time and it's fantastic. He's also very, very British. In fact, the entire book as a whole is very British, which I think is an excellent credit to Rainbow Rowell, who is an American author and has managed to capture the culture of Britain better than some of the UK YA books. Like, for example, I've never once in my life come across a YA book that contains a mention of Ant and Dec. This book mentions Ant and Dec. I don't know why, but that little reference just made me so happy. But back to Simon. He's basically a little bit of a mess. He's so confused about his life and what his future might hold because of the power that he has. But Simon has grown up in various foster homes. He doesn't know who his parents are. The mage has been the only parental figure in his life. He became his kind of foster father by making Simon his heir. And throughout the book, he is a very open and honest character. And I found that really refreshing, especially later on in the book when it comes to him and Baz. I just really want to jump straight in and talk about that relationship, but I'm not going to just yet. I'm going to refrain myself. But yeah, later in the book, he is very open, and I really like that about him. So the book is actually split into a few sections, and the first part is basically just getting to know Simon and the other characters. And Simon gives us a great backstory into Watford and his friendship with Penny, his relationship with Agatha, which I think was quite difficult to achieve within that small part of the book because they're in their final year at school. And so you've got all that backstory to try and cover really quickly, and Rainbow does a great job of that. He also informs us all about his relationship with Baz. They were put together by something called the Crucible that decides roommates in your first year, and it decided that he and Baz were to be roommates, which neither of them were happy about, but they ended up stuck with each other anyway, and so they've been sharing a room for the past 7 years. So they've basically come to learn how to work around each other without communicating or getting in each other's way. But when it comes to the first day of school, Baz doesn't show up, and immediately this sends Simon into a complete frenzy. He's convinced that Baz is away plotting against him, and so he gets very anxious about Baz's whereabouts. And it becomes borderline obsessive. He is constantly thinking and wondering about Baz. And this goes on for the first 150 pages of this book. And it is agonizing. You're so tense and anxious waiting for Baz to arrive. So the book does a really great job of putting you into Simon's shoes. And then when you get to part 2 of the book, that is when Baz finally does arrive. And oh boy does he arrive in style. Basildon Pitch is worth the wait. From the moment he was introduced properly and we got a chapter from his perspective, I was gone. I was just completely gone. He owned my heart. In his narration, he basically is a little shit. He's snarky, he's arrogant, he doesn't really care about anyone around him. Well, he acts like he doesn't care about anyone around him. I have plenty of characters that I love, but it's only once every while that a character comes along and really takes residence in your soul. Baz was one of those few characters for me. I probably already loved him a little bit just from Simon's narration of him, and then when he came into the story properly, that was it. What really made me adore him was a couple of chapters into part 2 of the book. It's his first night back at Watford, and he basically just starts talking about Simon and how he sleeps. And both of their narrations have just been like spitting out hatred at each other up until this point. And Baz just comes up with this one line, which is, "And I'm hopelessly in love with him." I can't cope. I can't even tell you how much I freaked out at that line. It was just, it was perfect. You see him as this cocky git of a character, and then within that one line, there's just so much more vulnerability in him. And I wanted to hug him and wrap him in a blanket and tell him it was all going to be okay. even though I didn't know if it was. From that point on, we know that Baz is like completely in love with Simon. And so before Baz arrived, obviously we had the scene where his mother came back as a ghost through the veil and passed on the message to Simon to pass on to Baz. And so because of that, Simon and Baz end up working together. And this is where the book got really super interesting for me, because it's from that point on that you see the relationship change between them. They've been enemies for all this time and now they have to start working together. And you see that friendship slowly starting to appear, even though they don't believe that they can trust each other fully. And then obviously it does build into something more. What I also loved is the way Simon can transfer his magic to Baz when they're fighting the dragon, and Simon discovers that they can do that. And then after that we get one of my favourite scenes from the book, which is the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star scene. I could not cope with that scene. It was just too adorable when they're practicing with the magic and then Baz is basically getting drunk off Simon's magic and you have the two of them sitting there on the bed holding hands, and it is ridiculous for both of them, but it's so cute. And the tension that builds up through scenes like this, you're just screaming at them to kiss each other. And then at Christmas, Simon turns up at Baz's house after finding out information, and that's when their relationship definitely develops into something more. You have an angry and upset Baz, basically suicidal in the woods. He's setting fire to trees and trying to set fire to himself, and he's trying to get Simon out of that, but before he does, he thinks about kissing him, and then Simon kisses Baz, which is just, yes, it's everything. It is literally everything. Because Baz has been so in love with Simon throughout this book, you just expect it to be Baz that kisses Simon, and it's not, it's the other way around. Even if Simon basically does it to shut Baz up. But that scene is just so perfectly written. The way it jumps from each of their perspectives, so you get to see both of their thoughts. So I just loved everything about that scene and the scenes afterwards. What I also really loved about this part of the book is the way it deals with Simon's sexuality. We already know that Baz is gay from his narration of the story, but Simon's different. Simon is dating Agatha at the start of the book. He doesn't really know that he's attracted to Baz until he actually kisses him. So after they do kiss, and then we get to see some of Simon's thoughts and how he's processing it. At one point he actually asks himself, does this mean I'm gay now? And then he goes on to say, I decide I don't have to answer that question right now. And I really adored that, because that's how it is sometimes. Sexuality isn't always one way or the other. There can be this huge grey area of confusion. So I love that Simon doesn't automatically feel the need to put a label on his sexuality or his feelings. So I just felt like that was a really important part of the book. And even at the end of the story, he's still not answering that question. What he knows is that he has feelings for Baz, and that's what matters to him. So yeah, that whole section of the book, the lead up to them kissing and then the aftermath of it, I was reading that at between 1 and 2 a.m. at night. Well, in the morning, technically. And I had to be up stupidly early the next day, and I woke up pathetically tired. I had a headache all day, but you know what? No regrets. There was no way I was going to put that book down at that point. I don't think I've read a scene quite like that one. That's what I really love about Rainbow Rowell, is that she is so good at romance writing. She builds relationships up between characters so perfectly. So even though this was a fantasy novel, she had some of her contemporary writing skills injected into it, and it just made the perfect balance. Obviously, Simon and Baz kissing doesn't help every situation that they have. They're still basically on different sides of a war. So yeah, there are still problems going on throughout the book, but I love the way they work through it together, and the ending is just so perfect between them. That epilogue, when they are dancing as Baz is leaving Watford, I could not cope with that epilogue. But yeah, anyway, I need to shut up about Simon and Baz now. I need to stop. I need to talk about how awesome the rest of the book is as well. Because it's not all about Simon and Baz, even though it is a love story. There is so much more going on. I have to talk about how much I love Penelope. She is such a fantastically strong character. She wears glasses for a start, so she's awesome. She's very smart, and she's also very sure of herself. She has a great confidence that I don't think enough female characters have. I also loved her change in relationship with Baz as well. So yeah, I really loved the scenes with all three of them. And then there was Agatha. Now, I've got to admit, I didn't really like Agatha that much, but I did love that the story included her perspective, because she's definitely not like the others at all. She doesn't like having magic. She would rather be normal and get to go and do normal things with her normal friends. So I liked that we got a look into how things were for her. So onto the plot of this book, I think it just ticks every box for me. And I loved the whole storyline with the insidious humdrum. I love how it turned out to be basically a version of Simon. It's kind of a part of him that's been left behind. So I really adored that scene at the end where he put all his magic into the humdrum. I thought that was a great conclusion to everything. I also found the mage really interesting. I definitely knew that he wasn't fully to be trusted. I didn't see him in the heroic, fatherly way that Simon did. And also, like with Rainbow's other books, there isn't a perfectly happy ending that ties everything up neatly. It's a fantastically satisfying ending, and I absolutely adore the epilogue. It's everything I could wish for and more. But I like that there are also hints of things that aren't quite solved. There are still a few questions left at the end of the story. I was also a little bit heartbroken about the fact that Simon doesn't get to find out the truth about his parents. I think adding Lucy to the story was a great idea, because at first we just get little snippets of her, and then the more you get to read from her perspective, the more you realise that she's Simon's mother. And I like her description of her and the mage's relationship, but the mage dies without Simon ever knowing that he was his father, and then he doesn't ever get to communicate with Lucy, his mother. Even though she breaks through the veil slightly and speaks to him in the night, he doesn't know that that's her. He assumes that it's Baz's mum's ghost, and he never finds that out. So yeah, I definitely like that there are still some little things hanging around at the end. I also really loved the magical system as well. I wasn't too keen on it when I was reading Fangirl, but in Carry On I just fully understood it. The magic spells are famous sayings and phrases and song lyrics, and I like that it puts so much power behind certain words. So I appreciated the magic system a lot more in Carry On than I did in Fangirl. So yeah, that is Carry On, and that is all I can think of to talk about at the moment. There's probably so much more that I wanted to talk about, but they've completely gone from my mind right now, and then the minute I stop recording on this camera, it's probably all gonna come back to me. But anyway, for the moment, that's all I can think of. But I can't stress enough how glad I am that this book has been published. It is a fantasy book with two male lead characters that fall in love with each other, and the fact that that is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list just makes me so happy. This is my level of expectation now. I expect more books like this to be storming up the charts. I love this book. So yeah, there are my thoughts on Carry On. Also, I don't know if you can see the shirt that I'm wearing. You probably can't. Maybe if I jump. That was an utter failure. But yeah, it is a Watford School of Magic's t-shirt that was sent to me by the wonderful people at Pan Macmillan, which is the publisher for Carry On in the UK. And I am just so grateful that I got this, because as you can probably tell by now, I am utterly obsessed with this book. I have to represent my love for this book in some way, so this shirt can do that. I want to know all of your thoughts about the book. Please feel free to share any thoughts you have in the comments. I'm just so in the mood to talk about this book. I want to talk about it to everyone. So yeah, comments are appreciated. I need to express my feelings. I hope you loved the book as much as I did. So thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye! I've just persuaded my sister to start reading the book, and she was reading it really late last night, and she said to me, "What should I do? Should I keep reading or should I put it down?" And I was like, carry on. She didn't find it funny.